Okay, we're on to page 6. So page 6 has just got 2 large flap features, which are pretty straightforward. I'm going to move all my extra pieces out of the way. It should have 2 flaps, although I don't. Here it is. Actually, I take that back. It's 1 large flap on page 6 and a small flap on page 7. So it's only 1 flap on this page. All right, so this is actually quite large. It is 8.5 by 8. You're going to score 1/2 inch along the 8.5 inch side, so you wind up with an 8 by 8 panel, and this is going to go on top. It's going to get adhered here, but the way I've designed it is it's going to be inset slightly, and it's going to have trim on either side. So I'm going to start by getting my trim down, then I'll come back and add this flap. I'm just checking the fit before we put it down, and it looks pretty close. But I think it needs to be trimmed just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Perfect. It's a nice warm day here in San Diego today. Started out kind of foggy, but it's cleared up a little. Okay, so here is page 5, page 6. I just want to make sure my orientation is correct. And this is the bottom. And I'm coming across to the top. Okay, that's in. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to check and make sure if it needs to be trimmed. We'll trim that off a little bit. Okay. I'm going to ink that white edge. All right. I didn't press that all the way down. All right. There we go. Okay, so now we have these 2 strips in. So this panel is going to, this is the spine and this is the pocket side. So I want it to I want it to open away from the spine, and I'm just checking to see that it's the same width. And it looks like I need to trim ever so slightly off. Yeah, that feels good. All right, so that's starting to look good. Cap my glue, it's so dry, I don't want it to dry out on me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you what's going on the ends. Ready to put this down. So this panel is going to slightly overlap both of these, so I'm just trying to center it. Okay, good. Okay. So I was just using the acrylic square to make sure that the panel is flush with the page and it isn't going off. So I was just pushing into both of them to make sure that it was coming on square, and it did. And so now we're in. All right, everybody, I'm back to continue working on page 6 of the Ciao Bella Greatest Show, and this is 10 by 8. The overall album size is 10.5 by 8.5, but the pocket page is 8 by 10. And so when I last left, I was working on the inside of this, and I trimmed down one of my papers a little bit too small, but I think I've got everything corrected and I'm ready to get started getting this laid down. So my goal is to try to finish this tonight. And I'm getting ready for all the new Graphic 45 collections coming in. Let's see, what are they? They're Life's a Journey, and the other one escapes me. Something Dreamland? I can't remember. I'll have to look it up again. But they're the 2 latest collections from Graphic 45, and they should be here, I believe, next week. So next week I'll be busy working on albums and content with those new papers, as well as getting all of our pre-orders shipped out. So it'll be a very busy week. That's why I'm trying to get this wrapped up and get my desk cleared off in prep for a couple more large projects. All right. So this piece was not quite wide enough to cover this whole place, so I split it in half, and then I'm using this little strip in between to connect the two. If I had a big enough piece, I probably would have done that and then put a pocket in here. But since it's already split by the pattern, I don't want to add a pocket. I think it might get too busy. All right, that looks good. And then I'm going to use this strip to cover the seam in the middle, and that should be just perfect. So it looks like I'm going to need to trim this strip just a little bit. So I'm going to do that. Just drawing a line. It looks like this one's a little bit shorter than this one, so rather than just cutting it straight off, I'm going to cut it at a slight diagonal to compensate for that. There we go. And so that, because this one is a little shorter, and trimming it at an angle, it'll mask that, so it makes it a little bit harder to see. All right, let's get some ink on it and get it down. And basically I had this paper, and like I said, it wasn't quite wide enough. This would be 7 7/8 is the size I needed. It wasn't quite wide enough. I think it was 7 3/4. And then I just split it in half if you guys are trying to replicate the design. But you could also just use a solid piece here as well, which I think I would have done if I had that option. And I still have 12 by 12 sheets left, but I didn't have a pattern that I liked. That went with the stripes on the side. So there you have it. And I don't know if I turned this upside down or not. Oh, looks good. There we go. All right, and then the last part of the inside flap is this piece, and I have this option or this option. And I think I'm gonna go for the colorful. I don't think I've used this pattern anywhere else. So I'm gonna dry fit, make sure I've got it in the right way. And then I will go ahead and glue it down. I think it's all inked up. It is. Okay, it's ready to go. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, and then the last piece of paper that goes on is this on our large flap. And again, each one of the flaps is a little bit different, and that's because I designed around the images in the paper collection. So some of the flaps are rather large because of that. But I just couldn't see cutting into this, and just because the way the horses are oriented, you would have had to do a curve, which you could do, but it would be kind of difficult. It would be freehand. Not for the faint of heart. So I get asked this a lot, and I'm gonna talk about it again, but I do not give the cut sizes for the designer paper. And I don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, everybody likes a different size border. I like a very tight border, a 1/16 of an inch. Not everybody wants to do that. So I'm always worried that people won't be happy with the border or the size of the border. The other reason I don't give the cut list for the designer paper is I rough cut everything, and here's my basic rule of thumb for a rough cut. So if you have a flap, fold over your hinge. If there's any folds in it, fold them over, then measure the finished plate. So in this case it was 8 by 8. I make this mat 1/8 inch shorter and 1/8 inch narrower, and that's where I get this cut from. And I want to measure my paper after I've scored it and put the fold in it, because sometimes it's not exactly 8 inches by 8 inches. It might be 8 by something just under 8, in which case you really need to dry fit and test your paper on top of the flap. And I do that throughout the build process, even with the video running. You really can't get away from that if you want consistent tight borders and the uniformity that comes with it. It's extra work, but it really pays off in the end. So again, what I'll do is I'll get it to an estimate, and then I will dry fit it, and then oftentimes I need to shave just a sliver off. So that is why I don't give the measurements for the designer paper. You just really can't, and I don't think you guys would be happy with the result if you did it that way. So there you are. There's my spiel on that. I go over it about every 3 videos because people ask me for those cut lists, and I'm not going to give them to you. I will give you the cut list for the black cardstock. You need to back off what you want for the borders, and I back off an 1/8 inch in the height and width after I've folded any of the hinges out of the way. So that's how I come up with it. So once you have your black down, it's pretty easy. You just measure from here to here and take an 1/8 inch off. Take an 1/8 inch off, or a 1/4 inch, or whatever you want your border to be. So that is the end of page 6. We are on to page 7. All right, let me get my papers for page 7. Okay, we've got a couple of things for page 7. So the main element is this flap, which is going to be adhered to the right-hand side of the sheet. Here's my spine on this side. This is the liner that's going to go underneath. I trimmed this off. This is the complete image right here. So I split it because this was a natural location to split. But then I decided this is really too thin for a panel because you really couldn't get anything on the backside. It'd be too small for a photo. So the way I'm making it wider is adding a trim piece on either side. And now I've got a flap that is 5 3/4 by 8, 5 3/4 by 8. So you could easily get photos on the backside of this. So that was the finished size. So let me tell you what the whole size is. It's 6 1/4 by 8, 6 1/4 by 8, and you're going to score it 1/2 inch. Okay. I'm going to set that aside, get this out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is put this in, and I just put this in ahead of time because I was having a hard time holding 3 pieces of paper in place trying to get my rough cuts. So you don't have to have that in ahead of time, or this could be one large panel. Okay, I'm just making sure it's the same width as the pocket page, and it looks good. And it is going on the outside of page 7, and when I say that I mean away from the spine. And I'm working with artificial light, and I'm sure you guys can tell, but I've just I'm running out of time. I can't I got too many things piling up. I can't wait till tomorrow for daylight. Okay, that's in. And when I flip it over, you can see there's just a little bit that's sticking out. I'm going to come with my X-Acto knife and trim that off, but I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do that later when I have better lighting. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and start figuring out the placement of the rest of my items. So this is going to be the large mat that goes on the inside, and then I've got this that goes here. So you can sort of see this continuous pattern, and then she's going to be placed here and like so. So that's what's going on here. So the next thing we're going to do is place a magnet behind this panel in here, and then find its mate on this side. Okay, let me get my tape. Okay, there we go. That's one. Two, I ran out of small magnets, so I'm using large magnets now. There we go. Okay, so now with that, I can go ahead and get in this panel. So I'm going to check for fit, and it looks good. Actually, I'm going to train that around so I can actually see the score line here. There we go. And I wish I had more of the polka dots because I like that a lot too, but I don't. So she's gonna go here. And I've got another strip that goes here. So I'm gonna add this strip first, and then I'm gonna center this panel between the two. So that's just a procedure thing. It's easier to center something in between the two than to line it up here and then find that you've got too much border on one side. And what I did was cut 2 1-inch strips. So that's how wide these are, just 1 inches. And like I said, I was just trying to make this panel wide enough that on the inside you'd be able to put a photo. Because I've kind of designed this such that, sorry, that was my air conditioner popping on, such that the top pages are really decorative, and I've left the inside spaces for photos. Okay. There we go. Every now and then I have a senior moment, and I think I'm sitting here doing something without the video running, so I jump up to check, but looks like we've been on for at least 15 minutes, which is good. We got some things in. So that's that. This piece is going to go on the flip side, and I just think that's beautiful. And then this is going to get installed here. So I just think this is going to look really pretty when it's all intact. There we go. And then that's not all. I've got two flaps that we're going to install. I don't know, here it is. And I think one of them is going to be a floating flap. Got these two, which I'm planning on installing like so. There we go. So I think that looks beautiful. So that is the current plan. So let's go ahead and get this in. I'm gonna turn it around and dry fit it. And it looks really good. Looks good. It's a really humid night here in San Diego. So it's not, the temperature's not high, just a high humidity. Almost feels like a thunderstorm. Okay. All right, so now we need to trim this piece out, and so first thing I'm going to do is make sure it's the same height, and it's not. And if I gave that to you in a measurement or in a cut list, it would have been wrong. So you really have to dry fit and trim, dry fit and trim. I just don't think there's any shortcuts. I've tried completely pre-cutting albums, and I'm never happy with the result. So I don't recommend it. I know lots of people do it and they do kits, but I don't recommend it. Everybody's trimmer's different, so you just come up with too many different results. Okay, so let's see, how's that look? I think I did it. We did it, first time. Some days are just like that. And then there's other days when I trim it down 10 times and it's still, I wind up tossing it and getting another piece of paper and starting over. Who knows? so again, we're on page 7 and we are nearing, well, I guess we're probably a little over halfway down on 7. I love these colors together. I just think it's so pretty. Okay, now we've got these 2 flaps. And I'm trying to decide how I want them arranged. I'm going to set the black cardstock, just set it aside for a second, and try to decide which orientation I want and roughly how far in from the edge I want to go. I kind of liked it the other way. I'm surprised because I thought I'd want this on top. I think I like this. So I am going to put a reference line right up here. And that's where I'm going to install my waterfall. I'm going to get one in and then figure out what to do with the next one. So if you have not put your mat down, another option would be to cut a slit in your mat and tuck the back of your hinge into this designer paper. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lay it down directly. The other way is a little bit more finished, but this is okay too. So another thing I've seen people do is on the hinge itself, use a punch so you have a decorative border here, so it's not just a straight edge. I might do that in my next album. All right, tape. This is tape, so. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I wanted it to come over onto this border a little bit. Okay. I had to remember. Okay, I'm going to use my Tim Holtz ruler. I'm holding it, and it's only attached on the corner, so I can still pivot it. So I'm going to get a straight line going here, and then I'm going to put it in. Put it down. Oops, my ruler jumped. There we go. Okay, so that's in. So that's one. And then I'm going to stagger the second one right about here. Let's take a look. Do I like it? Do I want it a little snugger? A little more snug? Let's look at it with the print on it. And then once I decide visually where I want this, I'm going to put a reference line down here on the bottom so that when I move all my papers, I can still locate what I had in mind. Okay. I think, oh, you know what? I gotta get a magnet in here too. Let's see. So there's a magnet here. And you know, it might, I'm gonna stack my papers and see if it's gonna hold it. But the magnet is gonna hold this large flap is gonna hold these 2 flaps in place. So I'm trying to see if it's gonna be strong enough. I think I'm gonna have to add a 3rd magnet, which I'll put here. There we go. So there is a magnet under this panel, a magnet under this panel, and then this is going to be attached here. There we go. And then between that magnet and this magnet, everything will stay closed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this down. After I dry fit, of course, it looks good. Okay. And then I can go ahead and dress this because I know I'm not going to put a magnet on it. And then I think it'll be easier for me to figure out where I want it to fit. All right, drop some papers. Okay, so this is gonna go like this and like that. Okay, and I like this. So I am going to put a reference line here. It looks like ¾ of an inch up from the bottom. That's my rough end. So, and again, it's really just whatever's visually pleasing to you. Okay, there we go. And I'm just using a light pencil mark that I can erase later. There we go. So there is most of page 7. Okay, what's left? We still need to line these 2 panels. And here's what I've chose to do. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm not sure, but I might come back and put a strip down here. I have to think about that a little bit. But I think these are trimmed out and will fit as is. Yep, that looks pretty close. I'm going to turn the whole thing over so I'm not putting my head into my workspace. And I'm going to move these 2, and we'll focus on this one for now. Okay, I'm liking it. So in this case, I'm actually going to adhere these 2 pieces together and then apply it as a single unit. And as I've done before many times, we're going to use some double-sided tape to join these 2 pieces. I'm just using this acrylic piece to push against to make sure that the edges are flush, because I don't really have any room to trim if I want my border to stay consistent. I'm using 5/8 inch tape here. You could use something smaller, but I like it because it spans both pieces pretty nicely. I'll burnish this in place, dry fit it. It's going to go this way because that's the way the balloons go. And you can see how nice and flush that is. All right. Looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and ink. Looks like I need to ink a little bit. Yep, the rest looks good. Okay, and so the next one is going to be the opposite. I'm going to put the balloons on this side and the pattern on this side. Okay, so let's look at this, dry fit it real quick. But I'm hoping it goes together just as smoothly as the first one did. And it looks pretty good. So I'm going to join these two pieces. Okay, I'm just pushing the acrylic against the edge to make sure they're flush. Get our tape. All right. Okay, now we're just going to make sure our balloons are going the right way. And whoops, I dropped that on the glue. It looks like everything is correct. And my balloons are going to go this way. But I'm actually going to turn it over because I need to see those three edges. So it may not be something you're used to, but I always work this way, even when I'm not filming. Rather than move yourself to the edge, move the edge to you. Turn your project over if you need to, but you have to get used to kind of reorienting in between. But it's always better, I think, to move the project to you as opposed to you to the project, leaning over. So it's just something to think about. Yep, and there's plenty of sticky there. I'm really liking the way this page came together. So that's it for page 7. And then during the embellishment phase, after I figure out how much scrap I have left, I may come put a decorative strip here, and it would most likely either be a dark green or this red to mask some of the hinge here. One of the reasons I didn't do a slit here is because I did this piecing, this color blocking, and trying to do a split across two pieces that weren't joined would be very difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult. And I just didn't want to spend the time fussing with it. So I'm really happy with the look in the closed position. I hope you guys are happy with it too. We are now on to page 8. And page 8 is essentially the same as page 1. It's different. I'm using different cut-aparts, but it's based on a 2-flap design from the top and bottom. And the flap sizes are based on the cut-aparts that came as the part of the collection. So it's going to go like this. I've got one that goes down and one that goes up, and I'll probably do it this way. Put the red on the tan and the green on the red, like so. And then I've got a strip of red that's gonna soften this edge here. And then I've got these pieces that are gonna go on the back side of these flaps. So that is, in a nutshell, page 8. So we're gonna need to get these 2 flaps installed and then get magnets placed. And I'm actually gonna go back to page 1 and refresh my memory. So here's what page 1 looked like. So page 2 is going to be very similar, and I think, yeah, okay, very similar. So page 8, let me do, yeah, spine, and then this is the outside pocket. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. And I think looking at page 1, I came in about 1 inch, and honestly, I wish I would have come in a little bit further. So that's what I'm going to do for this page. And the reason, I'll show it to you on page 1, is there's very little overlap between the 2 flaps. I think I would have liked a 1/2 inch more on either side. And then this would have been a little bit more of an overlap. I think it just would have looked better. But it's really personal preference. They don't have to overlap at all if you don't like it. Okay. Somehow these got skipped in the tape process, so we'll get this in. And I talked about it earlier, but I have this new tool here. I had previously been using something that was called an OmniGrid, and it's from, I think quilters use it, sewers, people that do quilts and apparel, that kind of thing. Anyways, it had a whole bunch of grid marks on it, and that's one of the things I didn't like about it. It was so busy when I was putting it on my projects, it was hard for my eyes to focus because there were so many lines. So I, after probably using it for nearly a year, had kind of come to recognize there's really only two lines that I cared about, the 1/8 inch line and the 1/4 inch line. So along with a friend of mine, Martha Jackson, we developed this tool, and this is called a pop socket. It's what's normally found on the back of a cellular phone, and that serves as my handle. It also helps me locate the tool because it's transparent. It can sometimes get lost under papers. But there's my grid lines, and to me that's so much easier to look at than all this. And then of course the Tim Holtz black on black when I'm working with cardstock. Black cardstock is really hard to see. So I'm a huge fan of this idea, and we have them for sale in our shop now. We just we cut off about 50 of these, so we have these in the shop, and I think they're very reasonably priced. They're actually less than what an OmniGrid at Joann's would cost you. So please give it please consider it. I find it to be a very useful tool. It's not for everybody, but I know some people have asked about it, and it's in the shop now. So we're calling it a tape tear tool. If you want to search for it, that's the term you would look for. Okay, so as I mentioned, I didn't feel like I had enough overlap in page 1 for the top down, bottom up flaps. So instead of coming in 1 inch, I'm coming in 1.5 inches. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the top down. I'm coming in 1.5 inches from the outside, or outside edge, yeah. Okay, now you can see there's significantly more overlap, and I think I like that better. All right, so here's my circus guy, and I think I'm going to install it like, maybe not. I think I have to decide after I put the base in, because I need to coordinate with this pattern, right? And it looks like I need to trim this down as well. So I think I'm leaning toward this. And it works kind of having him face the popcorn. I like that. So that's the orientation I'm going to put it in. Now that I know that, I'm going to grab my magnets, and we're going to get magnets down on the flaps. And then we're going to come back and trim this to size to fit. Sorry, I keep bumping my desk. I have carpet in my craft room, which I know is a big giant no-no, but it wasn't always a craft room. And my chair sinks into the carpet, and then I have to really struggle to get it to come out of the groove. So, which bothers me because every time I bump my desk, it shakes the camera, and I know that, so I apologize. Now I'm using bigger magnets, and this magnet is centered here, and it's not going to have to pass through this panel, but it'll be able to hold it in place. Now if this magnet had to pass through this and these 3 layers of paper, I might want to add a supplement, maybe a 3rd magnet, but because it's not having to pass through this panel, I'm just going to go with 1 set of magnets here. And I'm going to open everything up and dry fit this and get it trimmed down. So it looks like quite a bit has to come off. So Okay, let's see how that looks. Yep, looks good. Okay, so the estimates on this are, and I think I've done this all along, 4 by 4 and 6. So 6 by 7 and 7/8, 4 by 7 and 7/8, join them, dry fit them, and trim them to fit. And if you're using the same size border I am, you're gonna have a 10 inch across. You're gonna take an 1/8 inch off and it'll fit. And I chose to take it off the star side, but it's really up to you. So basically all of the, except for with the exception of page 7, because I did an extra piece in page 7, but all of the 2-piece mats for the pocket page are a 6-inch piece and a 4-inch piece joined and then trimmed down. So it's not that hard to remember. All right. It looks to me like I need to take a sliver off the height and width. The height, I mean. Not a lot, just a little. Yep, that's it. That is it. So again, I'm going to say it one more time. I can't stress enough that it's really not a good idea to totally pre-cut your pattern paper. You won't be happy with the result. You have to spend the time dry fitting. And I do that with you guys, so I know you know I'm doing it. Okay, here we go. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. Everything I trim for my albums, I trim on just a straight edge paper trimmer. So, you know, everything gets, all my 12 by 12s get cut into. So you should be able to complete your album, you know, never really picking up a pair of scissors. Everything, you should be able to accomplish everything just using your straight edge trimmer. Because that's what I do. I used to, you know, just cut it. If I needed a 6x6, I'd cut the 6x6 out and leave the L shape, you know, and cut it. I don't do that anymore. It's too time consuming. So everything I do is really based on being able to use a straight edge trimmer. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna flip this right side up and then we're gonna go ahead and put these on. And this is what we decided. This is gonna go here, and then the juggler will go on the one behind it. So when I'm finished with this, I'm gonna take a break. I've got some of, I need a contrast sheet. I've got some of the cover planned and trimmed, but I don't have all of it ready. So my last video will be focused on completing the outside cover of the album, and that'll be it. And that hopefully will be a 15 or 20 minute video, not an hour-long video. And I'm going to talk to you about a technique I'm using on the spine. This is the second time I'm doing it. I really like the look, but this is my second test of it, so I'm not sure it's going to hold up over time, but I'll tell you what I'm doing. And then you guys can give it a shot if you want, or there's an alternative style that you can use, and I'll talk about that too. There we go. So that's in, and then the last piece is we're gonna do the insides real quick. So what have I got planned? I've got polka dots and balloons. What do I like? I think I kind of like this. Yep, I like it. I think that's what we're gonna do. Even though I just used balloons on the other paper, I don't care. I love the balloons. So we can put the balloons on the top or the bottom. So I'm just gonna look at what I like better. And I like both. No, definitely not. So well, I think this is what I like. So here we go. So I'm going to dry fit this, and it looks pretty good. I am trying to decide if I'm going to join them, and I think I am. Yeah, I'm going to join these and then put it down. And this is 6 inches. It's actually 6 1/8. So you would need a 6-inch paper. So each one of these pieces is 3 inches this way. So that's 3 by 4. 3 by 4. There we go. So ink it, put it in. Looks good. And using my powder puff, it is mahogany, and I'm really loving this color. It's quite dark, but I like it. Okay, I'm gonna flip it over so I can get a better look. And I'm trying to decide which way I want this. I think I like it like that. Okay, I'm going to join these two pieces. Before I take the tape off, I'm going to dry fit. And it's perfect. I don't need to trim it at all. that is page 8. One last thing, and we're going to put this trim right here. So I'm just going to fit it real quick. It looks like I've already trimmed it down to size, which is awesome, and it's already inked. So on these panels here and throughout the book, some of them I've added trim pieces and others I haven't. And part of that's because I don't know what all I'm going to have left over. So I'm likely to come back and trim out some of these pieces as well, but it'll depend on what paper is left. So for now, I'm going to leave those as is, and I may add some trim pieces, and if I do, it'll get covered in the walkthrough. I'm not going to come back and do that as part of the tutorial. It's so insignificant, I can just cover that in the walkthrough, and you guys will be able to clearly see what I've added. And I don't do my embellishments typically as part of my tutorial because it's so time consuming, and I literally fuss around with it for a long time. I think it would be tedious to watch. But you can always go back to the walkthrough, and I try to cover all of those embellishments in detail, and then also try to get it close enough to the camera so that you can get a good look at what I've done, so you can replicate it if you so desire. All right, so that is the end of page 8. So before I close today, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through, maybe if I can get organized, the book as it's designed. Yeah, okay. So here's our 4 pocket pages. So this is page 1, and that flips up and up, and you can see I've got a trim piece here. Page 2 and 3 is our clown feature page. So this opens to the left, and this opens to the top, and there's a trim piece up here. And this is an example of one where I'm going to try to come back and find something that works here. But because of the blue and red, I'm not sure I've got anything that's going to work, but we'll look. And this opens to the left and to the right. Okay, page 4, page 5. It's a door style. There you go. And this is a nice technique to use when you don't have a trim piece, is just to add a little piece of black right there by splitting it apart, and then it actually looks like a trim piece. So that's something to consider. I didn't do that early on in the album because I was trying to go a little bit faster. In retrospect, I may have done something different if I had given myself more time. Okay, so this opens to the left. This is just a nice big panel. This opens to the right, up and down. And I'm going to talk about this right now because we just sat down to do this, and I just realized I did not put a magnet in here. So there's nothing holding this together. So I'm going to have to figure something out. And I am going to run a banner when I'm actually doing the construction and editing the video. I'm going to run a banner to remind you to put down a magnet because I don't feel like I did. So there's a couple things we can do. One, we could try to slide it underneath the designer paper, and then the other thing is we can add an embellishment feature to mask the magnet, which is likely what I'm going to do, but I haven't decided yet. So I will show you how to do that, but I'll also mention early before I put the designer papers on, to let you know you can place a magnet ahead of time. So that's 6, 7, and then of course we just finished page 8. Okay, that's it. All right, so when I come back, we will work on the cover, and we're almost at the end of the book. Thanks for tuning in.